I paid $175 for this, but it does come with like all of the retail packaging. Oh, cool, it comes with the game. And what is this? I don't know what this is, but that's really cool still. Okay, now the seller told me that they were trying to do an aftermarket battery upgrade. So this is obviously the battery. We got some connectors. We've got I'm not sure what those are. Whatever these are, I think it's part of the mod they were trying to do. We got the memory card, and here is the Vita itself. Okay, and it's actually, ooh, we've got some serious scratches on the screen over there. You can see right there the scratches on the screen. I don't think the screen's broken. I think those are just scratches, so that's the good thing. Such a cool back cover. And a few scratches, but really not bad. This still has the protective coating on it. But the real problem, at least from what the seller said, is on the inside. Now the seller said that during his attempted modification of this PS Vita, he knocked some components off the board as well as some soldering pads, so he was not able to complete this modification attempt. So I told him I'd buy it from him and try and make a video on it. I paid $175. He said he does not have the battery that came with the PS Vita. He's just got this aftermarket battery. So the first thing we got to do is take a close look at this motherboard and see if it's something that's fixable or not. Oh yeah, there we go. That's pretty nasty. I'm gonna get this thing under a microscope so we can see very closely what's going on here. Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff going on here. It looks like the charge port is mostly okay. This is a torn pad. I don't know if anything goes there or not. We've got this I don't know if this used to be flux or what, but it's like corroding the board a little bit. Got some nasty hair over here. Yeah, same with right here. We got some green corrosion going on. I'm not sure what that would be from. Flux usually doesn't do that, but I suppose it could. The headphone jack is melted. I think it'll still work fine. I think the end of it here is fine, but it just doesn't look ideal. And now the really fun part. This is where the pads are that you're supposed to solder this battery to. And as you can see, we've got some major issues going on here. There are several layers on this board that have been exposed right here, so that's definitely a problem. And same with over here. And then I think we've got a component missing over here. This whole part of the motherboard has been just torn off. And then we have all of this. This looks like leftover flux, but we also have random solder balls around the board, so that's got to be cleaned off. So these things, if it gets lodged right in between two of the wrong components, then that can create a connection there that shouldn't be there and cause something on the board to short out. So that's definitely not ideal. I got to watch for that and inspect for any more of those that might be on this board. First thing I got to do is clean up this board, and then we can get a better idea of what exactly is going on. And then this is the area that I'm going to focus on, because I've got to figure out if this is something we can even fix or not, and if we can separate these layers enough to make it so they don't short together when power is applied to this board. I'm going to start by using a metal dental pick. And I see questions sometimes why I use these. And I use this one specifically because a lot of this stuff, if you just take like a toothbrush and some isopropyl alcohol, that's a great way to clean the board, but it doesn't really scrub anything that well. And some of this stuff is just really caked on here, and it doesn't just come off with a toothbrush. So I like to come through with a pick and just kind of like loosen everything, even though it is a metal pick, which is not necessarily ideal. That's just the way that I've kind of like learned to do it over time, and so that's what I use. One of the questions I saw recently on another one of my videos is whether I knock components off the board or break them off using a metal pick. And I think I may have done that one time a long time ago. The thing with the metal pick that is nice, and once you get used to it, it works pretty well, is that you can really feel how much pressure you're putting on stuff. So I can tell, you know, I can tell how much pressure I'm putting on stuff. Oh, and this guy's loose right here. Now, it probably looked like I broke that off with my pick, or loosened it with my pick, but that's not actually what happened. I put a little bit of pressure on it when I was cleaning. It looked like it moved. Maybe actually, I don't think it moved. You know, I'm not saying this is the best way to clean this stuff, especially using the metal pick, but I am saying that's the way that I've done it for so long, and I've gotten very used to it, and I can clean quickly and effectively like this, and so that's what I do. And I think I've done about as much as I can do with that. Now I'm gonna bring in some isopropyl alcohol on a toothbrush, and hopefully that will get all the rest of this cleaned off. I might need to add a little bit of heat. Flux will usually be easier to clean if you heat it a little bit, so we'll do that if we think we need to. This is just a big hole right here. This is crazy. So that's what we got to figure out next. So I was able to find a good board that I know is good. And this is what the good board looks like. So we are missing this capacitor on the other board. And then these are the 3 solder points that we are missing from the other board, the bad board. These are the points on the battery connector, which is on the other side of the board, right here. This is the original battery connector, and the original battery plugs in just like this. You can see we've got a red, white, and black wire, and those points correspond with these points, white, black, and red. Also, this capacitor right here is definitely missing from the faulty board. That would be this one. No, this one right here. So we need to install a capacitor on here, and we also need to install one right here. So we'll do that in a minute. Now the seller sent me a link to a video he was using for this modification, and the video showed the creator soldering battery wires to these points and then a thermistor to this point. So that is what these little guys were in that baggie you saw earlier, which normally thermistors work by opening a circuit when a certain temperature is reached. But instead of soldering to these points on this faulty board, since clearly there's multiple layers here, what I'm actually gonna do is just cover these all up and put some solder mask over these. That will hopefully protect all of these layers of the board right here. I think what I'm gonna do instead is actually use the original battery connector, and I will take this new battery, which has a black and a red wire, and then cut this connector off from the original battery, and I will connect the black to the black and the red to the red, and then we'll be able to just plug this new battery right into the original connector. And then after that, we'll solder this thermistor onto the white wire from the original battery connector. First things first though, we need to get this board repaired. You'll see me using some gel while I'm doing the soldering. That gel is called flux, and that just helps the solder flow. So this first capacitor, I'll be replacing one of the pads. Looks like it's fine. The other pad has just been completely torn off, but that's not too big of a deal. We can just connect a wire from this other capacitor onto this replacement capacitor because they're both connected to the same ground plane. Once that's done, we'll move down and replace this other capacitor that's missing. One of the pads has been torn off of the board, so I'm just going to move it over a little bit, scrape off some of the solder mask so we have a new pad, and then I'll just solder that capacitor right onto that. So we've got this capacitor reinstalled. Everything else down here is right where it should be. This fuse is good. I did test that. You probably also noticed me putting all of this green solder mask on. I wanted to make sure and protect these holes and the multiple layers of the circuit board that are exposed down here. So I put solder mask on all of this, and then also under this capacitor, because I don't know whether that's a power layer under there, but this path right here, this circuit trace that used to be here, was a ground trace, so that's all connected to ground. And you also notice that instead of running a wire from this capacitor over to this one, I just angled it a little bit, and so they are soldered together since they're both connected to ground anyway, or supposed to be. That also gives this one a lot more solid mounting than if I were to connect it to a wire. And then this one is connected onto this part of the circuit trace, and this one over here is connected to this part. So I think we're pretty good on this side of the board. Let's turn it over and start working on the connection from the battery connector to the actual new battery. This is the new replacement battery. This is the old original battery. So we need to make these two wires connect onto that connector by clipping off the connector and attaching them to those two wires. So I think I'm going to cut about half of this off, and then we'll probably cut it about right here. That'll give us a little bit of extra wire so we can tuck it down under here, just to make sure we've got enough. So first, let's go ahead and cut it. Let's go a little further out. A little further out. Always makes me nervous cutting it too close. And I'm not going to cut them both at the same time, because then we could short out the battery. We don't want to do that. Okay, let's go up here. There we go. And then we're going to do basically the same thing here. I'm going to cut it a little bit long just to make sure we've got plenty of wire here. I think what I'm going to do is fold these wires back a little bit, and then we'll be able to connect it easily to that connector right there. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just cut this plastic away just a little bit. Just enough so I can fold these wires back. Okay, I need to flip these around so they're like this. Now we just need to strip the wires a little bit, and then we can get them soldered together. So now I'm just gonna bring my wire strippers in. There we go. Okay, now I'll do the same thing here. Now I'm going to put some shrink tubing on here. I usually forget to do this until after I've done the soldering, but hey, it looks like I'm actually going to remember this time. That's always handy. Now what I'm going to do, there are a number of ways you can do this. I'm going to connect these wires together like this, and then I'm going to put some flux on. Then I'm going to solder them together. And then I will slide the shrink tubing over it and then heat that shrink tubing up. And that should create a nice strong joint, nice strong wire. So now we have the battery cable all connected. We've got the thermistor connected. I think this is all connected how it's supposed to be. I've never done this before, so I can't say for sure, but I think it's time to get all the ribbon cables put in, get the battery connected to the board, and see if it explodes. All right, I think we're about ready to install this, but we have to get the battery installed first, or connected first. Here we go. Let's see if anything explodes. Okay, good so far. Nothing's getting too hot. Okay, that's good. Let's tuck these wires under here. All right, now you have to make sure this thing can be on here how it wants to be. Let's put the wires on top of that. No, we don't want to do that. With that white wire out of the way, I think that's actually going to work just fine. I'm going to get the screws installed, and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, that's not too bad. As long as we can get this back cover to sit on here normally, I think that'll actually work just fine. Okay, now the real test is going to be to see whether this thing charges. Here we go. Plugging the battery into power. Come on, give us something. And we have no charge on the battery. Oh, 0.09. That's not a lot, but I'll take it. Now the battery is discharged, so it might just charge at 0.09 for a little while. So I'm gonna let it charge here and then we'll just kind of see what happens. In the meantime, I'm gonna get this back cover on and make sure that the back cover fits on, get all the screws in, and then we'll let it charge fully, and then we'll see if it'll turn on. This ribbon cable is like one of the worst in these things. Trying to get it on. Oh, there we go. Got it. Oh, here we go. Now we're at 0.45. That's good news.
The next day.
Okay, let the battery charge overnight. Let's see if it's gonna turn on. Come on. And we get nothing. Well, that's a bummer. Now I did notice, I mentioned it when we were looking at it, but it looked like that board could have had some liquid damage at some point. So let's take another look at that. And I'm just gonna double check and make sure there is voltage in the battery. Yeah, we got 4 volts in there. Make sure that's coming through the connector. And it is. So 4 volts is plenty for this thing to be able to start up. Now this battery's still plugged in to the other side of the board. Let's check and see if we have voltage onto this chip over here. 4 volts. So we've got power into this chip. 2.2 volts. That tells me that the chip is also putting out a different voltage, which, theoretically that means at least part of the chip is working. Since I don't have any sort of diagram or anything, I don't know what that chip is supposed to be putting out. 3.7 volts. So my main worry here is I'm wondering if all of this damage on the board down here caused a short between these layers. Unfortunately, there's just really no way to know for sure. We can look at it, but you just can't tell whether there's shorts between the layers or not. So that's one of my main worries here. Since I don't really have any way to diagnose this, I think what I might do is actually just put those capacitors back onto this board, because this board, at least as far as I can tell, is a working board. So if I put this capacitor back on and this one back on down here, this board should work and we can plug that into the PS Vita and see if the Vita turns on then. Now the seller did say that the PS Vita did fully work before he did this mod, but it is possible that that's not true. So that is also one of the options. It could be just that the Vita also, especially like that crack on the screen, it is possible that the screen is faulty or something, so that could be why it's not turning on. Although I think there is a light that comes on when you do turn it on. So I'm assuming that that's not the case. I've had really good luck with sellers selling me stuff and being honest about what they are, so hopefully that's the case here, but I do have to keep that in mind. So let's get the capacitors put back onto this board, and then we'll try this board and the rest of the Vita and see if it'll work then. Okay, and now with that done, we can get this board installed. Okay, now the problem here is this battery, I don't even know if this battery is good. So also, if it is good, it's also dead, so we're gonna have to charge this one anyway. Get it plugged in. All right, now we'll plug in a charger and see if the battery's gonna charge. Okay, and here we go. Ooh, oh, 0.09. Okay. I think that's pretty normal for a battery that's totally dead. This battery has basically 0 voltage, so now we can wait for this battery to charge. And after just a minute or so, it's up to 0.62 amps charging. So that's good news. That means that at least I think the battery's probably going to be good on this one, but just got to wait for it to get fully charged. Then we can try and turn it on and see if this board is good and if this thing will turn on now. All right, this has been charging for probably about half an hour or so. Let's see if we can get it to power on at all without losing too many parts out of the back. Okay, we ready? Ooh, nothing on the screen yet. Oh, the charge light's blink. Oh, here we go. We do have a screen. Okay, so we need to let it charge some more. That's super good news. This might actually be fixable. The other thing is, I don't know whether I want to do this battery mod or whether I just want to leave the stock battery in it. Honestly, I don't really want to do it. Let's wait until we can fully test it and just make sure everything works on it, then we can decide. So I've opted to just leave this PS Vita stock. One of the reasons is because these aftermarket batteries are sometimes just not reliable and they don't last very long. So I think the best option here is to just leave this stock. Now that this PS Vita has been charging for about half an hour or so, let's see if it's gonna turn on. Oh yeah, look at this. There we go. Okay, let's make sure all the buttons work. And those ones do. These ones actually don't work in this menu anyway, so. Okay, I'm gonna go through and get this set up and just make sure everything works. Touchscreen works, that's great. All right, oh, and here we go, look at this. There we go. So this PS Vita is now working. If you like this video, you'll probably like the video where I bought 9 broken PS Vitas and tried to fix those. I'll leave a link for that right on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see if I can fix them. Thanks again for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.